Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Star Wars Stuff Podcast, where we talk all things Star Wars. My name is Colin
And my name is Ted, aka Steady.
from Countdown City Geeks, and we are here with a very, very special guest. He has done, voices from the Star Wars: The Clone Wars micro series all the way back in 2003. He played King Boomy in Avatar: The Last Airbender. He has been a Transformer. He's done so many voices, and including the Polar Express. I'm so excited to dive into that. Please welcome. Oh boy, here we go. Hang on. I know we just talked about this. Please welcome André Sogliuzzo.
Well done, sir.
Yes. All right. Welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Going great. Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
And very, very snazzy intro, I gotta say. I love the graphics. They look really cool.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully Lucas would approve.
Hopefully. Hopefully. Yeah. So let's just dive straight into it. You played a big part of the Clone Wars series that came out all the way back in 2003. You voiced the clones, the droids, even Captain Typho. What was it like to be, to join a legacy such as big as Star Wars, and how did joining the Star Wars family impact you as a fan?
Well, I am old enough to be from the first generation of Star Wars fans. So, of course, it was every kid's dream come true to suddenly, be involved with Star Wars in any way. Of course, in my generation, we didn't know we didn't know that it was a clone army. We didn't know, the ARC troopers and all of that stuff hadn't yet sort of been given a name or a voice. But yeah, ultimately, when the micro series happened, I was thrilled, just because I was a big Star Wars geek like everybody else. But and again, forgive me, you guys would know better than I do. I don't know the timeline. Did the Knights of the Old Republic game come before the micro series or after? I don't know. And I haven't done my homework for this podcast to look it up, because I don't remember if I was cast on the micro series because I had booked the game and done the game already. And then I'm in Knights of the Old Republic 2 as well. And those games established a lot of precedent in an interesting way that then came later. What was neat about that and the micro series, from my memory, was tying into the sort of, the prequels, not the original Star Wars movies, but the later prequels put out, which gave names to these characters and expanded the lore. Although, again, more hardcore than I would know, between the original movies and the prequel movies that came out, was there Star Wars fiction published that may have fleshed out some of the world as well? Were there books? I know there were books later for everything, but were there books in between those prequel movies and the original Star Wars films? That's for you folks at home to do your homework and write in and answer that question, rather than me stump the hosts in the first minute and a half. But okay, so
Colin's read all of them. I'm pretty sure that's the extended universe, and Colin has the entire library.
Yeah. So no, the reason I do that is because I was already out of the nest, so to speak, and running around the world. So I was not as versed in Star Wars land later in life as I was as a kid, right? So when I went to do the micro series, it was really a thrill and a lot of fun, but I wasn't as keyed into those later prequel movies. And I wasn't a big fan, to be honest, initially of those films. Now, when we go back and look at them, we kind of have to love them. At the time, it was kind of such a jolt and a shock. I was such an original generation Star Wars guy that the newer movies I wasn't as thrilled with. And also, I think the films got better because they were not cast with bad actors by any stretch. Okay, Liam Neeson is a genius. And oh God, forgive me for giving his name, forgetting
Ewan
his name
McGregor.
right. Yeah, Ewan McGregor. I'm a huge fan of both of those gentlemen. But I remember in that first one, I don't know how familiar they were with acting in front of a green screen or to
Yeah.
nothing. They're a little stiff in in the first ones, And I think everybody was like so excited to be doing a Star Wars movie that it all felt a little precious and a little stiff and a little, everyone was just taking every word like it was gospel. And what was just so wonderful about the original Star Wars movies is Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill, they had no idea what crazy old George was doing. You know, nobody had ever seen anything like it. None of us had. We didn't
Yeah.
know this. So they were walking around and they just didn't give an F. You know what I mean? They were, yeah, have it up, fuzzball, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, George says there's going to be a big spaceship behind me, whatever. You know what I mean? So there was this kind of fluid kind of casualness, which was so charming about those movies. So that when the later ones came in, everybody was very, very, what I liked about the micro series is it was a kind of way to reclaim that turf in a way, it was a little more immersive and because it was animation and it was kind of old school 2D. And from what I understand at the time, it was also kind of Lucas's original vision for the
Yes.
original Star Wars, which
Yeah.
the old Buck Rogers movies, which were in the 50s and short and kind of almost two-dimensional. And, it was the 50s. You go back, watch 50s sci-fi, and it's all kind of charmingly stiff in this great way, And so that's what the micro series kind of reclaimed in a really wonderful, fun way. So that was really thrilled. But you have to remember, when we do animation, we don't get to see it usually until much later. They record our voices and animate to us. That's the way the best animation is done.
Yeah.
So, so some of the characters, I didn't know how cool they were till I saw the show, and then I was like, oh, that's really cool, So, but yeah, again, I don't remember if the games came first or the micro series, or maybe the second game clearly came after the micro series, but I don't remember the order of the first one. But that's kind of the long rambling answer to your first question.
As far as I knew, the the games came shortly after of the first part of the micro series, because you guys filmed it, because there was the part 1 and then part 2, because part 2 leads directly into Revenge of the Sith.
Well,
Did you guys film?
What you've got is an actor memory. I may have recorded those games before I recorded the micro series.
That's true.
But the games probably took longer to come out. So there was probably all kinds of overlap. And that's why my memory is getting like, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you most remember from working on like a Star Wars project? Do you notice anything different between the production team, between the rest of the crew behind the scenes? Is there any more, creativity that goes into the process, or more secrecy surrounding any projects with Star Wars?
With all video games, there's all kinds of secrecy all the time. Everything is an NDA, and you sign your life away and do not speak and all of that. So what I remember, one of the things I always vividly remember, and this might be from Knights of the Old Republic 2.
Yes.
Is what I was saying earlier is there's a wonderful overlap between the games and the show and the movies and the world. Like, they allowed them to kind of cross-pollinate each other and inform. The lore might trickle in from a game, and then we'd see it later in a movie or vice versa. And I vividly remember, and I didn't do my homework and look these up. You guys can tell me, because I want to give a shout out because I just brought this up with Izzy and the guys over at what is it? Sabers.
Legion Sabers. Yep.
Legion Sabers. Shout out
Yep.
to Legion Sabers, guys.
Yep.
I was talking to him because he's a lightsaber dude.
Yeah.
In that, I think it was the second game, I am the voice. I'm probably not credited because it'll say miscellaneous voices, though they did give me credits on some of the stuff I do on those games.
Yeah.
I am the voice that tells you what the color of each lightsaber means.
Oh, that's so cool.
And that's a big and when we were, they go, "Oh, Andre, you're going to read this." And I suddenly look down and I go, "Wait a minute." I said, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I said, they've never told us what these colors mean, as far as I know, unless it was in the books or something and I don't know about it. But
right.
And then they stopped and they kind of chuckled, the Lucas people. They go, "It is a big deal." And I was like, I'm the dude. So yeah. So that was kind of fun to be. So if you go back and play Knights of the Old Republic 2, somewhere in there is a narrative voice that tells you, the green saber means this and the red one blue, So and I said those words maybe 21 years ago, and I have long forgotten the color of the sabers. Shame on me. But yes. But yeah, so, and of course, Legion Sabers knew right away, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they knew what the colors meant. But I confess, I don't remember. But I am the guy that tells you. So that's one of my precious claims to fame. And again, that people always ask me if they think I know things, and I don't, as I'm revealing to you now. But those games were going to be remastered. Then they weren't. Now they are. I don't know. Like, it keeps going back and forth. So that's all out there in the ether somewhere. But they're great, great games, and I hope they get remastered. Forgive me for coughing.
No, all good.
I'm getting my voice back after being sick from MegaCon last week.
Hey, I understand that. My friend came back too, and he was not feeling so well after. So all good. So Captain, I want to talk about Alpha 77, aka Captain Fordo. He is such a show stealer in the Clone Wars micro series, because of every time he pops up on screen, he's just doing like just something awesome, just something over the top that is just like, oh my gosh, like this show put the wars in Clone Wars, like it really did. And I've also heard people say that this show had to walk so then Dave Filoni's Clone Wars could run.
Thank you.
Yeah, because of this show was just incredible for for me growing up watching Star Wars, and then you got episode 1 and 2 and that one iconic line from episode 4 of where Luke Skywalker was like, "You fought in the Clone Wars," and then that was all the context that we really had at the time. And then they had some different books and stuff like that where they talked about it, but we never saw the actual Clone Wars in action. You love this shirt. That's awesome. So seeing characters like Captain Fordo in action, doing all of these military movements and stuff like that, going through the city, he just had this swagger. What was it like to play that character, and was your approach to him different compared to the other clones that you voiced?
Well, I have to confess to you, the answer is no, because again, I didn't see how badass he was. He was a voice on a page. And it's a clone army. So if you got one, you got them all, right? They're all clones. And I remember at the time, I recorded him, and the scenes were fun, and and Kennedy was just so much fun to work with, and we were all very, very, very collaborative. From my memory of those sessions, and we were, whenever we could, we were working together as a group. But what was funny was I got this lovely, lovely letter from this Japanese guy years and years ago. This fan letter. And this isn't to mock him, but I just, I do voices, and he was like, and it was like, only you could be voice of Captain Fordo, clone trooper. It was like he wrote me in this beautiful 2-page letter, and he told me he had like learned English to write me this letter, and I still have
Wow.
it. But and I kept thinking, and it came pretty early after the micro series was out, and I was just like, I went and looked because I had the DVD, but I honestly had not yet really watched the micro series, and then I
Okay.
suddenly went, I'm really badass. I got a
Yeah.
big gun. Like he is
Yeah.
like Fordo is super badass. But at the time, I had no idea how badass Fordo was as I was reading that part. I'm just, I'm reading the character in my mind. So I didn't really know how prominent and how cool, you know what I mean? And again, I'm everybody. So there's Fordo, and then I'm early Cody, and I'm also
Yes.
I'm Rex, even though Rex didn't yet have a name in that series. But
Yeah.
I did. Cody did. So I'm Cody. I'm Fordo. I'm Rex. I'm Typho. I'm in the games. I'm the battle droids.
Yeah.
And then again, didn't know. I in fact went back and looked at my credits a year or two ago, and I went, I'm a Mandalorian. Like
Yeah.
I'm an early Mandalorian, and we all
Yeah.
know how badass the Mandalorian is. So yeah, I've got major street cred on all those guys. I can boldly say I am the OG. And proud of it, and it's a real honor to be to sort of break that ground in the Star Wars world and own it. So, and it's nice to talk to people who really love the micro series, because everybody has their generation of stuff. Later
Yeah.
on, the micro series doesn't mean as much. It got kind of buried for a while, but now apparently it is running on Disney Plus, so you can watch it,
Yes.
which
Yes, it
I was
is.
very grateful and thrilled, because when the new series came out, they kind of buried the micro series, and it's like, oh, let's
So
pretend that one never happened, and or whatever was going on. When you go to Star
yeah.
Wars Celebration, uh, which I was at and had a blast. There a couple of years ago, I went to the Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim. There was no micro series stuff anywhere to be seen,
Yeah.
and that sort of broke my heart. But all the cosplay dudes are dressed like the micro series guys, and they're
Yeah.
dressed like Fordo and Cody, and they were all really great when I met with them, and they were all thrilled and excited. But in general, yeah, I'm in Rebels later on. But yeah,
Yes.
we'll get to that. Yeah. So, but when we were doing the original micro series, it was just every Star Wars kid's dream, and I was having a
Yeah.
blast. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I just remember growing up and watching that, and again, like I said before, I felt like it really put the wars and Clone Wars, like it really showed us of what all these characters went through in a really cool, stylish way. Something I will say, in season 7 of the Dave Filoni Clone Wars, they actually reference the Clone Wars micro series in a way,
Oh, nice.
because when Obi-Wan and Anakin are talking to Ahsoka, Anakin is kind of like, "Hey, what's going on?" Because there's alarms, and then Obi-Wan walks through the door and is like, um, "The Separatists have attacked Coruscant, and Shakti is with the Chancellor on the run," and that's a direct reference to the Part 2 Clone Wars micro series, and I thought
Oh,
that was so
great.
cool. So I was just like, yeah, that's awesome. Because of, I don't know why you would, kind of not talk about a classic like this. Like this really paved the way. I know George Lucas talked about it highly when the show was being created. So
No, I
it's
know
just like,
he was really happy with it at the time. And
yeah,
then, I won't get into it because I know nothing, but it's all often corporate, the way the corporate world works, you're always pushing your latest product, and that's just the way business works. And so the micro series kind of, became this kind of sweet 2D antique, I think, in a way, and we went into the more fully dimensional later Clone Wars stuff.
Yeah.
But again, those games are great, and if they remaster them, it's going to be, I hope so.
You're not
Here's
only in
hoping.
the
No.
Star Wars microverse, but you're also in the Star Wars Legoverse.
I
Yes.
am.
You
I
played
am very
Cassian
proud.
Andor in
I
the
am-
All Stars game.
I am
What?
proud to cover Cassian Andor whenever there is any Lego related stuff coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. What? How long did it take you to sort of get a decent sort of characterization or voice for Gabriel Luna's character?
Well, not a long time because it's kind of what I do. And again, now having watched Andor, I'm much even better than I was when I did that because we didn't have any reference really.
Yeah.
We had this
Wow,
sort
okay.
of first movie, I guess, was out before the Lego thing was, and so I could sort of look at that. And Diego Luna's funny because he has an accent, but I think he was originally born in the U.S., so his accent comes and goes.
Mm.
He's not consistently. I don't want to say bad. He doesn't consistently have a heavy Latin accent. Sometimes it's almost there. Sometimes it's really there. Sometimes it's gone. So, and I have to be very careful because I am one of the people, of course, that cover Puss in Boots as well. For many years,
Yeah.
I was the only one. So Antonio Banderas is very easy for me because he is consistently heavy. Diego Luna, there's a little overlap between. They're both kind of husky and sexy and mysterious, and so when I'm doing Diego Luna, I do have to listen close because the sort of Puss in Boots is in my subconscious. And Diego Luna, I don't do Diego Luna all the time, so I have to warm up and really listen to him so that I make sure I'm not suddenly sliding into Antonio Banderas, yeah, and you never know. There could be, there could be more Lego in the future. You never know. Things happen. Yeah, but that's also a thrill to sort of touch on the micro series, to touch on the games, to touch on Star Wars Rebels and the Lego world, So yeah, I kind of keep one foot in all the Star Wars whenever I can.
Yeah. Speaking of Star Wars Rebels, let's talk about that because you played a Imperial officer called Slavin, and he appeared in two.
Is it Slavin or Slavin? I don't know. And initially, he had a different name when I read the sides, and then when I auditioned it, I remember he had a different name. I don't know if I'm allowed to say what his original name was or not.
Oh,
but then,
okay.
Because isn't he torturing slaves or has slaves that he's ordering around?
It was the episode of where Thrawn meets Hera for the first time. Yeah.
But he's the worst kind of villain because he's not even the main. He's a villain's butt kisser. You know what I mean? He's a toady to a supervillain. So he can't even you can't even get into him as much because he's a suck up. You know what I mean? I mean, I love playing him. He's just the perfect kind of sort of little British worm that we love to hate. But and he's evil and whatever. But his boss is meaner than he is and smarter than he is. And so it was kind of funny when I finally watched it. I was like, oh, you're not so evil. You're a twerp, Slavin.
Yeah.
But, he's a lot of fun.
So that wasn't the only Imperial that you played because you also did two voices of Stormtroopers. I saw as well, and then I saw this on your IMDb page. I'm not 100% sure, but you also voiced. You did one of the voices of the TIE pilots and the game Squadrons.
Yes. In Squadrons and. Shame on me for not going back through, but you did your homework. Star Wars Squadrons is really, really a cool game.
Yeah.
so I did do the TIE pilots as well.
That's awesome.
That is so cool. Let's
Yeah.
let's stick to games, and I apologize for the Star Wars fans getting a little bit off track, but I have to take the opportunity because we talked briefly. I played a handful of games. I grew up, just like high school, college years,
Yeah.
playing a lot of like first person shooter games. I played a lot of like horror games, a lot of them zombie related. And you, sir, you're probably in 4 out of 5 of the top like zombie games out there. So, I mean, Back for Blood, State of Decay 2, which is fantastic, Dead Island 2. You actually did some also zombie. I don't want to say voiceover. It's zombie noises or zombie character work. Did you always know you could kind of bring some creatures out of you or some
Yeah, I
undead
mean,
out of
I,
you?
I, I always tell people like I was the kid who got sent out to the hall for being disruptive in school, you know. So I turned it into an income. So yeah, I mean, you know, from really the age of 5 or 6, I was imitating either people or creatures or sounds, and yeah, and I'll do zombies every now and again, but it it depends. Not to be a prima donna, but I've been doing this a long time,
Mm.
and it depends who I'm working with
Mm.
because you know they really shred doing zombies and creatures. You really shred up your throat. You know,
I bet.
it's
Yeah.
physically very and so I'm very very protective. And if I know who it is I'm going into work with, then I'm like, okay, we're gonna play, we're gonna collaborate, and they're not gonna blow me out. You know, and so we're all very very protective and careful, and I can have a good time. But if I'm going into a room with people I don't know, and okay, great, he's this big, and you're like, you know, you're busy screaming and screeching and growling for hours on end. You
Yeah.
know, it could be really really rough on your throat. So I'm very very careful. But yes, I've always been into
Yeah.
monsters and zombies and all that stuff. Uh, I who else did I do? Oh, speaking of which, it's I just saw some. Again, this is a deep aside. Um, a director just got in touch with me. I did a short film about 10 years ago by a brilliant director named Granger David, and it's a short film called Edge of the Woods. And I did this little monster voice in that, and I spent a day with him making it. And I'm working. Oh God, I'm forgetting who plays the daughter in Mad Men, and later played Tabitha.
Oh.
She's all grown up now. I can't think of her name. She's brilliant, and she's this little girl who has a monster in her attic. And I did all these wonderful, this little kind of almost little big-eyed monster creature. And
Wow.
I literally just saw that the other day, and I was like, oh my God, you know, because I'd never seen it. And he got in touch with me. It's like, I heard somewhere you hadn't seen the film, and so after a decade, I finally got to see a project I worked with. But anyway, I digress. But yes, I always love doing monsters. And then there's another one. Um, back into your zombie. It's on my Instagram. Uh, um, Condemned 2.
You're getting ahead of me.
For all you zombie fans, Condemned 2. I'm Ethan Thomas. I'm the hardened kind of cop. But that world really will give you nightmares. Like Condemned 2 is a scary, scary, scary game, and there's all kinds of weird ghouls and zombies, and yeah.
You're not selling it good enough, so I'm gonna take the reins because I people need to understand what this was. People think today in today's video game universe, games
Yeah.
are scary, but what they are is they are just things pop out, things jump at you. It's all about loud noises and screams. Back in 2008, that was a sequel. And there's a one in 2000. I think the first one came out in 2006. Condemned was a short franchise, video game franchise, where you got scared because the game set you in a tone that you could not handle physically.
Yeah, it's
Whoever
scary.
whoever
Yeah.
wrote the game, it
Yeah.
wasn't about scary creatures all the time or loud noises. it was about setting the right tonality and what you were experiencing as a video game player. And so Condemned was fantastic. Condemned 2 elevated that franchise just into the stratosphere and took your character, Ethan Thomas, into a nightmare, an unimaginable nightmare. And so
Yeah.
I played Condemned 2. It's one of my all-time favorite video game experiences. And so when I saw you voiced Ethan, I was like, "Oh my god, this game
Well,
terror I had nightmares for weeks."
yeah, it
And
is, and I have to say, and I love all the fans that are so sweet and come up to me. But when certain fans come up and they don't mention any of my other work, and they go, "I loved you in Condemned too," I'm like, who do you have dismembered in your trunk right now? You know what I mean? Like, it's the game that serial killers aspire to. Like, it's
Jeez.
a really sick, scary game. But if you go on my Instagram page, shameless plug, I recently, about a year or two ago, because people remaster stuff on their own and put it up there.
wow.
So if you go on my Instagram, I cut together my own little trailer from footage that had been remastered from the original game, because the game
Nice.
itself has not been remastered, but somebody remastered a lot of it. So I cut together sort of a narrative, Ethan Thomas's narration, and I made a little short trailer just for an Instagram post. So if you go up there and look, you'll see it, and it looks really amazing.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough for your work and just
Oh, my pleasure.
that game and that experience. It was like a movie, is what it was. It was a
Well,
cinematic
and it's
experience in
scary
video
because
game form.
it is exactly that, and it's also psychological because you don't
Yes.
know, is this happening or is this in Ethan Thomas's mind? So there's all of that. That's what makes it more scary,
Wow.
because is it the known or is it the unknown? And all of that is beautifully done in that game. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant game. All right, I'm getting off my horror game.
No,
We're off
you're
track.
good because of I will definitely get off track here like in a second. But speaking of video games, you recently were in probably one of the best games of 2024, which is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Yes.
Because of you voiced the character
Ernesto.
yes.
I met this Ernesto. You meet this very nice Italian man when you are in the Vatican. Yes.
Yes.
And to be honest, I think we recorded that during the pandemic. If
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not maybe it was after. I lose track. But and it was I was at home, so in my home studio. So I lose track. I lose memory. Like when in the old days when you used to go to a studio with other folks, So like I went to this place on this day, and I worked with that director that I know. And
Yeah.
you have a hard memory of it. I did it, and I remembered later, but then I only found out recently again. I work with Celebworks when they set me up for all the conventions I'm very fortunate to go to, and Alex Lemus goes, "Hey man, you're in the new Indiana Jones game. I didn't know that." And I'm like, "Am I?" Because I totally forgot. And then when I went back and looked at it, of course, I remembered all of it. But
Yeah.
at that point, I'm reading a script. I'm not reading. I'm not seeing that whole world, but that game is
Yeah.
so beautiful. Yeah, I haven't played the game, but I've seen the clips, and it's
Such
just
a good game.
yeah. And also, I have a strong connection to Italy. I have family there.
Yeah.
I lived there as a boy, and I was married there. So I've spent a lot of time in Rome, and just the way they capture the light of Italy is spot on. It's amazing. I mean, it really looks like Rome when you're playing
Ye-
that game. It's amazing.
Yeah. They definitely knew what they were doing when they made that game. That game
Yeah.
was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I let's see. Don't want to go with that. Another kind of deep cut for you was a TV show that, if it came back today, would just blow everything else out of the water. Celebrity Deathmatch. I wanted to ask you, who was your either favorite or just which voice or celebrity was the most
Well,
fun to
well,
portray
I,
on Celebrity
again,
Deathmatch?
well, what's funny is I forget which came first. I think Deathmatch. I think Death. To be honest, Celebrity Deathmatch was probably my first animation gig.
Ah,
Um, and that kind of got me started in the business in a way. I was living in New York. I'm from New York, and um, uh, ultimately, I ended up doing over 50 celebrity voices for that show.
Wow.
And back then, MTV was so cheap that the audition process was there was an 800 number.
oh
And
my
I would get
God.
a call from the casting director. There was no script yet. And they would just say, these are the celebrities that are going to be on this week. And again, this is pre internet, right? So I couldn't just boot up somebody's voice and listen to it, you know. And so, then they would say, oh, it's going to be, some were easy to get and other ones weren't, like Slash of Guns N' Roses, like, well, what does Slash sound like? I couldn't just go to YouTube yet, so I
Yeah.
used to have to run around and do my homework and go to the Museum of Broadcasting and find interviews with people and then smuggle
Yeah.
in a tape recorder and then play it back. um, there's a lot of crazy ones. Uh, I some of them I was everybody. Some of them I'm Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg, and Billy Crystal all fighting each other to the death. Um, that's one that was a lot of fun. I remember um, one of my favorites, and if I remember the original creator, and forgive me, I don't remember. I think one of his favorites, and it's so politically incorrect and naughty and wrong, is Gandhi beating the hell out of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
No.
And that one's just so wrong. That's why it's funny.
Oh, I love it.
You want a piece of Gandhiji? And he's just like, he's tearing the turnbuckle and beating Stone Cold Steve Austin to death. Yeah, I mean, it's just wrong. But yeah, so those were really fun. I remember I did. Uh, oh well, okay. Here's one. This trickles into celebrities that I have voiced that I have then met and had to do an impression of them for them.
Oh
Okay.
no.
I, I had the honor of collaborating with Oliver Stone on
Okay.
a documentary series called "The Untold or Secret History of the United States," and I did like God, maybe 20 or 30 voices for him, historical voices, and so we were working together a bit. And then as it got looser and I got more comfortable and less scared of being beaten up by Oliver Stone. I uh, I confessed to him that I did his voice for Celebrity Deathmatch. I did him and Martin Scorsese.
Oh wow.
But
Wow.
again, back then there was no YouTube, so Oliver Stone's voice, like who knew what
Yeah.
Oliver Stone sounded like in 1998 or
Yeah.
96 when I did it, and so then he immediately stopped. He goes, "Your Scorsese was great. Your impression of me was terrible." And I was like, "You're absolutely right. I had no source material on you yet, Mr. Stone." Okay, but yeah,
Oh.
Scorsese, I had, um, always cut to an emotional flashback scene. I remember that. But yeah, so that was a funny one. But yeah, I love doing deathmatch. But I was gonna say. Deathmatch was my first, and then later, or around the same period, I did an episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I play Bushwick, the giant cockroach. But don't ever call me Bush. You can call me Schwick. Don't ever call me Bushwick. Yeah. So, and those were sort of the first two animated things that I did in New York, and then I moved out to LA, and most of the stuff people know me for I did over because there were no video games in New York at that period. There wasn't a lot of animation being done in New York in that period. Now there's a lot of crossover all over the place, but back then you kind of had to move to LA to get an animation career going. So I had to move to Los Angeles in order to get really working in the business.
Yeah. Um. So diving into to more of the roles, and don't worry, we'll definitely get back to Star Wars, but like there's just so many great like characters that you played. Let's talk about the Polar Express, because I am from the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. So, and those characters are from the Grand Rapids area. So I thought it was super cool that you were one of the only voices in the movie besides Tom Hanks, because, you know, Tom Hanks played like every other voice in that movie. So, what was your experience like, of doing that movie?
Well, it was a tremendous amount of fun working with Robert Zemeckis, Bob. Those of us who know him, Bob. No, but Robert Zemeckis, and that was an interesting job because I was honoring the work of a brilliant actor named Michael Jeter.
Yes.
And Michael Jeter, I mean, people might know him from a movie called The Fisher King. He was incredible. He just was so brilliant, so funny. He was on Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds. Again, that was before all of your guys' time on TV in the 90s. But he was just this amazing actor, and he died in the middle of that film.
Yeah.
So he had created those two characters, and there's a lot of stuff about them that I think it's on, maybe it's on the Blu-ray deleted scenes if you go back and look. But you asked me, you knew their names, but when I auditioned for it, they sent me source material of Michael Jeter because the movie wasn't out, and I had to listen to that and match his work, and they are actually fraternal twins.
Yes, Smokey and Steamy.
So they say, I'm Smokey and I'm Steamer and we're twins. And they tell this whole story of the hobo named Kane on top of the train and where he comes from, his whole origin story, what it all means. All of that backstory was cut out, and then Zemeckis animated that whole train sequence, which is all me. But what happened was, because, you know, these things take a long time to do, it was particularly challenging because they didn't record me first. What they recorded was two acrobats trying to do their kind of, and again, not to trash their work, they're not vocal impressionists. They're not voice actors. They were acrobats. And so, and they were roughly Michael Jeter's size. So they did the mocap with these two guys doing all those acrobats with the cotter pin and jumping and all of that. So I then had to recreate Michael Jeter's voice over their bad impression of Michael Jeter. So it became even trickier and even harder. So like I said, when you're doing animation, right, you record the voice first and you animate to that. When you have to sync a voice to a performance, it's never as good and it's a lot trickier to do. It came out brilliantly, ultimately, because I'm a genius. No, but I mean, it did, because it just, and again, that's early. It's the first mocap, that movie, right? They had never done a mocap feature before that, and it was this new thing. So yeah, that was really, really tricky. I remember, I think I came back a couple of times, and we have 2 or 3 sessions on that. And Zemeckis was wonderful and tremendously collaborative and open to ideas, and we would throw stuff out, and you know, you're trying to make it fit. You have a script, and you know, and I'm having to, you know, they've already said these words. I'm not having to necessarily completely sync to their mouth from what I remember, but I'm still syncing my vocal performance to their physical performance, and that's tricky to do. So yeah, I mean, it was a real thrill, and it was a real honor because I was already a big Michael Jeter fan, and I wanted to make sure I really got what he did right. And I was really thrilled when it came out because I think we really nailed it in his honor in a really wonderful kind of way. And it's just a timeless sequence. And I would say, even if it wasn't me, that would be one of my favorite parts of that movie. Is that sequence? You know, it just came out really, really, really well. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was just a big deal in our town because I remember when the movie came out, and our family went to the theater and saw it. And I think it's the caribou scene that is just like the one that
Caribou!
yes, that has always stuck with my twin sister.
3 hours before we clear this track. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so good, and you just like, I mean, because when you're listening to certain characters, I think there is that kind of I'm trying to think the best way to say it, like of where if you're listening to someone speak, you are like, you know, you are either drawn in or you're like just like, oh, okay. And with with just how you did, you know, Captain Fordo and Smokey and Steamy and King Boomy and all these other ones, you are drawn in every single time
Oh, well, thank
that you are listening to these characters, and it helps enhance the story. So just amazing work, and thank you for everything that you do. But that is a childhood memory for me, because I just remember our family going to the theater and seeing it, and then afterwards my siblings and I were like, oh, caribou. I do it terrible, but like we would be like just we just kept repeating like those different lines from the movie and stuff. So, you know, it's just awesome to actually talk to the person that was doing that.
Well,
So
thank you.
it's so cool.
Let's keep it on the big screen. Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. You played Sideswipe.
Damn, I'm good. Yeah.
Dare I say, probably my favorite out of all the movies. There's just something so more emotionally investing for me in that film. I think. But for you, what was your experience like working with the great Michael Bay on
The
a
great
massive...
Michael Bay. Well, that's a funny one too, because back to the conversation we were just having, that film was funny because it was done while they were in production. A writer's strike happened.
Wow.
So yeah, so I don't know that the screenplay was completely finished. Oh, that's the wonderful drawing by Yura Kim.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing. This graphic you just popped up of Sideswipe, she's
Yeah.
incredible, and she was very sweet, and allowed me to make a T-shirt of that I wear, but I don't sell it, but I wear it. Yeah,
That's cool.
That's one of the best Sideswipes out there is by Yura Kim. A big plug for her. What I was gonna say is that there was a writer's strike, so Michael Bay had animated a lot of those fight sequences. He was in production on that, and they were kind of creating the script as they went along in a way. So when I was originally booked, the original concept, if I remember from that audition, was that Sideswipe was supposed to kind of almost have a kind of James Bond sexiness. And it was sort of British, but not, and that was the idea. And I remember, so I sort of, in my audition, kind of, gave them a few different varieties of that. I don't remember what the lines were in the audition copy at that time, but, but he, much like James Bond, you can just listen and feel the handsome.
Yeah.
That was kind of what's going on there. So the session was on, it was off, it was on, it was off. And then when it finally happened, I was in New York. And they said, oh, Michael Bay wants you on Thursday. And I was like, okay. So I went to a soundstage in New York, and he was out in LA. So we didn't work in the same room. And I went in, and he was in my headphones. And there are these amazing robot scenes happening. But as I said, again, now you're throwing voice to already animated picture, which is never the best way to do it.
Right.
But from my memory, we were also throwing words and seeing what fit, because, the robots had already been, so now I am pretty sure he finished the mouth later once we'd recorded my audio. but still you got to match what you're saying to the movement of the head or a movement of an
Wow.
arm.
Yeah.
And so you got to see what fits. It's like what I always say about it's called ADR or looping. It's making puzzle pieces with sound, and you're fitting those little pieces together. So we were improvising a lot. There was some script, and then he'd say, and I would say something, and he'd go, "Okay, wait," and then I would hear Michael Bay like clicking away with his editor, and then boom, and then we'd see my voice come back.
Wow.
and, okay, that didn't quite work. Let's try this, or I'd say, let me try that, and we were like just he was like working with a really excited, hyperactive teenager. It was really fun, and he was wonderful, very collaborative and very open, and and so I'm not going to say it 100%, but damn, I'm good. Might have been mine. I'm not sure. Could be. But I always say, just like I said about Polar Express, even if it wasn't me,
Yeah.
that first Sideswipe debut through Shanghai is my favorite Transformers moment in any of the films. Even though I probably like the movie Bumblebee maybe more than that film, but that Sideswipe sequence, because it's so smooth and so clean and so perfect, and then damn, I'm good, and out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The whole thing is so beautiful and so cool to watch. The later stuff on the airport tarmac gets a little cluttered. And even though I voiced it when I was watching it, I'm like, is that me? I'm not sure. Because we're all very processed as well. So sometimes
That's true.
when it's a crowd of them, of Autobots, you don't know which one's which.
Yeah.
A little bit. But and then I'm also Sideswipe in the Universal Studios ride as well, here and in Orlando.
I was about to ask that.
yes,
that's super
me.
cool.
I've been on that. So
and
good.
and that is still up and running. So that's a thrill to be part of that amazing ride.
What an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was really a thrill. When they did the behind the scenes, they shot interviews with me and everybody else, but then they cut me out and kept everybody else. So if you go look up the behind the scenes Universal Studios ride, they cut Sideswipe out because I don't know. Because I remember doing an interview at the time, and that was great to be with Frank Welker and everybody else,
Yeah.
That was that whole project, and I am now very connected to the Transformers world in a way that I wasn't because of the conventions. I'm going to, in fact, be at TFCon at the end of March here in Burbank, California. I've been to TF Nation in Birmingham, England. I've done TFCon here once before. So yeah, now that I know the whole world and the fan base much more. When I first did the Transformers movie, to be honest, I didn't really know it well because I was too old to be part of that original. I mean, the cartoon probably came out when I just wasn't watching cartoons as much at that point. So to me, it was a toy.
Sure.
I wasn't connected to the show, but then later, now I'm much more connected to that world than I was when I did that job.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. From playing a character like that to King Boomy, to Captain Fordo, what has been and I know this might be hard, but what has been like your favorite role that you've ever voiced? I know that might be hard.
This question in two ways. Because I'm known as a voice match guy, and as I said, I covered Puss in Boots for many, many years. I covered Doc for Disney, any original Snow White related stuff. So there's voices that I do as a voice match and voices that I created out of thin air. So as a voice match, Puss in Boots, of course, he's always a great deal of fun to do. And then the other real honor and thrill was to be chosen by Pacino himself to cover Tony Montana for the Scarface video game. Okay,
yeah.
You got a problem with that? Okay, look, I never liked you. I never trusted you. Yeah, and that was over probably close to 6,000 lines as Tony Montana.
Oh my
Wow.
god.
And then in Payday 2, maybe another 3,000. I don't know. So yeah, to get to inhabit Tony Montana, was a real honor. Thousands of people auditioned for that part, and I booked it. So Tony Montana is one of my big faves. Again, but those are voice matches.
Right.
Then if we get to voices I created, of course, King Boomy is,
Yeah.
Mr. Pippin Paddleopsicopoulos. I and because in longer Avatar interviews, I talk about where the voice came from, but Boomy's voice was initially based on a friend of mine, an old aristocrat that I was very close with, who had one of those old New York old money where he smoked Camel Down filters, and he had this wonderful kind of New York theater aristocratic voice. And then I just made him a little higher and a little crazier. So that, if we want to go for deep cuts,
Yeah.
there's a wonderful character on American Dad called Deal. And Deal is one of my favorites. And Deal is sort of based on Truman Capote with a dash of Droopy Dog. And I love Deal. So he's one of my favorites. And then a deep cut 2002-3 would be Gaspar Le Gecko from Brandy and Mr. Whiskers. I love Gaspar. He was beautifully written, really funny. I am entrepreneur / dictator of this rainforest. He's this kind of evil but charming gecko who tortures Callie Cuoco. Charlie Adler was in it. It was an amazing cast, wonderful show. It only went 2 seasons, but Brandy and Mr. Whiskers. So I'd say Dill, Gaspar, Boomy, Puss in Boots, Tony Montana. Those would kind of be in the pantheon of some of my big faves. And then again, the clone, any time I'm involved in Star Wars, but the thing about the Clone Troopers is your job as a voice guy is to get out of the way. Fordo is badass because he's badass, but the voice is very, very little. I'm not saying it's nothing. It's just it's subtle, and that's not always easy to do. Is to really be neutral, much like a transformer. You're not doing a huge vocal performance. So I remember back in the day when I was doing it, I was a little insecure because I was just like, I want to do more, but you can't because this is a clone army and, you can't make them different from one another because they're clones,
Yeah.
So the differences in them are the way they act or the action that you've become so imprinted on. But vocally, no, just keep it clean, keep it straight. And if you get out of the way, the character will be cool in and of itself. And I'm so thrilled that you think so,
Yeah.
But so, yeah, those would be, I know I'm probably forgetting another one of my favorites, but those, voices that I created, those would be, and then the voices that I matched would be another one. Yeah.
You've been in the voiceover game for over 2 decades now, probably coming up on 3 pretty soon. In what way has the voiceover industry evolved or changed over time? What have you noticed yourself on some of the pros and cons on how the voiceover industry has evolved?
Um, uh, I mean, the some of the pros are cons. It just depends how you want to look at it. I mean, the technology has gotten easier and easier and easier. So guys like me, as I always say, have a microphone growing out of our butt. I have a mobile studio in my car because I also, as I said, I do a lot of voice match. I do movie trailer stuff, and sometimes that requires you to match a voice because they need to change a line for the purposes of a trailer. So sometimes you can't make it in LA back across town to get to your studio to get to a microphone. So I bring my laptop, my microphone in my car, and I pull over and try and find a quiet street, and I can send out auditions, and a lot of my movie trailer auditions, they're using what I'm sending them, and I'm sending that from my car, and that's going up, on a movie screen, or in a TV commercial or a trailer. So that's great. And also, I can take a trip and not worry about missing work because I can carry a microphone and a mobile recording setup that's small enough to transport. But the con of that is you're never quite unplugged. You're always, work could be just around the corner. Rent money could be right around the corner. So that's it, as I said, that's a pro, but it's also a con. So that's the one thing for aspiring voice actors, and that might be something we get to later. Um, as I said, when I started out, you had to be in New York or LA. Because the technology and the internet and all of that has gotten more ubiquitous and easier, you
Hmm.
don't have to necessarily be in a major market to start a voiceover career. You
Yeah.
can be in Atlanta, or you can have an agent in Atlanta and maybe be in Mobile, Alabama, and email something to him, and then he's emailing it to LA. So, in that sense, as long as you can set up a recording studio for yourself, you can kind of work from anywhere in a way, and that's but how you break into the business, that's changed or not. Everybody has their own story of how that happens. But
Sure.
um, yeah, I mean, so then post pandemic, now the technology has always been. When I started out 30 years ago, you could do a commercial from a booth in New York with a client in Chicago, and it didn't matter. They always used to say, "Oh, no, 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 no. If you leave town for animation, yeah, we got to be in the room together." And so you would lose that job. If you
Wow.
were out of town, you were out of luck. Post pandemic, with the advent of Zoom and all these other recording things, and we're on one right now. Now the directors and producers are like, wait, I can stay home in my slippers, and of course you can. You always could. As I said, for 30 years I was doing commercials in different cities, and it didn't matter. You're in my ears. We're not touching each other.
Hmm.
So what's changed is they finally figured that out. So I still go to the studio sometimes, but they're at home on Zoom. So
Wow.
as I said, Gray Delisle and all of us used to work together in a room. That's becoming more and more rare, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But we're still in each other's ears. We often work together live, but we're not
Wow.
all in the same room.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a major way that the business has changed. But again, for me, that's great. I can leave town and not miss an animation job, as to where I used to, if I left town, worried about missing an animation gig. But uh, radio commercial or TV commercial gigs, no, you could always be wherever. It didn't matter. So it's just that the industry has finally allowed non-celebrity people, in quotes, to not be in the same room. You know,
Gotcha.
if
Yeah.
you were Donnie Depp living in Paris being super cool in 2001, they were thrilled to patch you in. But if you were little old non movie star me, oh, Andre's out of town, that's too bad. Like, why? Why do I have to miss the gig? The technology's there, it's always been there. But anyway, I
Oh.
digress.
Has technology also made the industry more competitive for voice actors such as yourself?
I'm sure it
That's a good
has.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, because more and more people have access to a microphone, and more people. Yeah. So as I said, for people in other secondary markets, that it has. I mean, when I talk to my friends that are producers, the thousands of auditions that come in for given things, yeah, it's
Wow.
pretty amazing. I'm very, very fortunate to work as I do, to have wonderful agents that still bring me a regular flow of auditions. Um, but yeah, it must be even harder than when I started, I would think. Although when I started, it was hard. It was always like, there's so much competition and so few jobs and whatever. So, um, lucky for me, yeah, I do. I guess I do feel it a little bit somehow. But all you can do is do what you do and focus on what you've got in front of you. And if you start to worry about how many other people out there are auditioning for this thing, just do your thing, do your
Yeah.
read. And if you're really good and you keep at it, eventually it will get noticed. Because yeah, there's more actors than ever, but there's only the same amount of good ones are born. You know what I
Mm.
mean? But we're not all born into the union. I had a tremendous amount of talent before anybody knew who I was, and I had to get my face out there and get noticed, and it took time. But and then I was fortunate to put together a career and keep working. But yeah, sure, it's a very, very competitive, difficult business, and if you're looking for constant affirmation, love, and gratitude, find a different job. Um, No, because
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like you're spitting in the ocean. It's like I just sent out 10 brilliant auditions. Don't they know I'm a genius? And it's like, who knows? All you can
Yeah,
do is what you do and hope somebody heard you. And
great advice.
I'm lucky that I've been heard. But so yeah, you keep at it and you keep doing what you do, and hopefully you get heard.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Yeah. Very, very well said. I think that's all the questions. I think my last question is going back to the Star Wars side of things. What is your favorite Star Wars movie of all time?
Empire Strikes Back.
No hesitation. Heck
No
yeah.
hesitation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going right there. Even though I'm the first generation, I remember where I was and who I was with when I saw that first Star Wars movie. I couldn't believe that they could make a better one when I saw Empire Strikes Back. I was just like,
Yeah.
wow. Also because that's also my taste. It's darker. Yoda's so cool and so wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just all Luke, I am your father. I mean, all of it. It's just so much culminates in that film in such a wonderful, heavy, dark, dramatic way that yeah, that's just hands down gonna always be my favorite. Um, but I love the new ones.
Okay.
I love the more recent Star Wars films, and now Andor is brilliant. I love
So good.
Mandalorian. I mean, they're just making really wonderful, wonderful Star Wars projects all the time now, and yeah, I'm thrilled. But if we go back, it was the film, it was the age, it was everything. That movie for me, yeah, I always loved Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. Great, great film. Um, I think that's everything. Andre, thank you again so much for
Thank you,
for
guys. Such a pleasure talking with you.
yeah. Is there any upcoming projects that you would like to, kind of
Yeah, I should have done my
advertise?
homework. What do I
Oh,
have? Well, the new Indiana Jones game is out.
so good.
There's all kinds of stuff I'm never officially allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, also, one of my other favorite characters that I left off was the Khajiit from all the Elder Scrolls video games.
Okay.
Maik the Liar. Maik knows many things. Maik knows many things others do not. I'm Maik. I'm Jazargo. Yeah, there could be more Maik in your future.
Okay.
There could be, as I said, there's always more Star Wars coming down the pike. You never know. Keep your
Hmm.
eye peeled. Um, I see you have my Lego Riddler up there. He was
Yes.
in the Lego world. He's a fun one to do.
Hmm.
What else do Sausage Party, the TV
Yep.
series. I'm
Hmm.
in that, which is really fun. I play a bunch of different things, but one of the highlights is Melon Gibson um,
Okay.
in Sausage Party. What else is there? Monsieur Malat from My Adventures with Superman is
Yeah.
one of my new faves as well. And he's level the brain, Monsieur Malat. Um, yeah, so I love him. What else is there coming up? Yeah, there's a few big franchises that I've been involved with over the years that have
Yeah.
more stuff coming up, but I can't say what they are.
Yeah.
Convention wise, I'm gonna be in Anime Las Vegas.
Ooh.
That's coming up. That's in. I'm at TFCon. I think at the beginning of March. I'm losing track. I should have written all these down. I don't know which comes first. TFCon in Burbank, and then Anime Las Vegas. Then I'm gonna be in a retro expo in Plano, Texas in July, and
Oh,
then
wow.
Round Rock, Texas in August. So I have a lot of con appearances, but shameless plug, just go to my Instagram, André Sogliuzzo at Instagram, and please follow me fans out there, because I was late in the game to the whole social media world, and
Yeah.
the more people like you, the more conventions you get to go to meet people who like you. So
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that I've been doing a lot more conventions. I was just at MegaCon,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so yeah, if you go to Instagram, this will have where I'm going to be. It'll also have projects that are about to come out, or when they do come out, I immediately pop them up, or when I'm allowed to talk about them, I put them up. And then a random one, there's a new album for all of you under 40. If you know the band Empire of the Sun,
Yes.
electronica band. I am on a track of theirs called Rhapsodize, and I did voices for their current world tour as well. So if you're going to see Empire of the
Oh.
Sun, you're going to hear my voice open the show and speak throughout the show. But I did this wild session with Empire of the Sun like 8 years ago, and then Luke Steele contacted me about half a year ago to do some stuff for the world tour. So that's a big thrill, and that's out there too, and that's kind of completely arbitrary, but really, really, really fun to be involved with as well. So I'm always doing something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
That's
congrats.
awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you guys. Real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. From myself and Ted and Andre, may the force be with you always.
Force be with all of you.